Hi, I just wanted to talk about how I make my favorite herbal smoothie that I consume almost every single morning with ashwagandha and shatavari in it. In the end, it will look like this. It's pretty good. What I do first is I have bananas. I add some water to that. And then I add some milk. I use almond milk. You can use whatever type of milk you want. Ayurveda says to use cow's milk because it's more calming. They say not to use something like goat milk because goats are more energetically hyper, and so a cow is more calm, and that's the type of thing you're trying to go for with ashwagandha, and so it synergizes with that, causing a just a calming, grounding kind of effect. And so that's why Ayurveda says to mix those two specifically. And so some people will say you shouldn't use almond milk or some other type of milk, but I think that it still works perfectly fine, and I don't really want the hormones that are going to mess up my endocrine system and the antibiotics that will mess up my gut health. So I just use this. You could use organic milk if you can find somewhere that actually treats their cows well, but that's pretty unlikely. Traditionally in Ayurveda, they would treat their cows like pets, the way that we treat our dogs. So it was a different situation back then too. So do with that what you will. So I'm going to add some of this up there. Then what I like to add for flavor is blueberries. Um, Now, blueberries, they are really good for you because they have anthocyanidins in them. But at the very same time, um, the problem with them is that anthocyanidins are a type of tannin, and tannins actually bind to alkaloids, which are in ashwagandha and a lot of herbs. It's also what's in a lot of prescription drugs. And so there's been stories of people taking thyroid drugs, and those drugs actually weren't doing anything for them. And when they stopped taking or eating blueberries, like within 3 hours of consuming that uh, thyroid drug, all of a sudden the drug started working again. And so that's just an example of how it combines to alkaloids and deactivate them from working, and that applies to herbs as well. And so Ayurveda traditionally mixes herbs with lots of tannins with herbs that have alkaloids in it. So they just kind of ignore that rule, and it seems to work. So it's a little controversial, but more modern herbalists generally like to avoid mixing those two. So I tend to avoid mixing them myself, but I also will add a little bit of blueberries. You saw how much I put, like maybe like five berries or so in there, just for some flavor, not enough to necessarily deactivate all of the tan or all of the alkaloids in the ashwagandha. Um, and so that's the flavor we're going for. Next is the ashwagandha itself. So I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of that in here. So I just add it, straight in there. And then I also add shatavari, which is another great herb. Um, Ashwagandha is said to benefit men or male reproductive health, and shatavari is recommended for female reproductive health. And so fusing them together is synergistic. It's kind of like in Chinese medicine, the yin yang or yin yang, however you want to pronounce it. And so they kind of balance each other out. Also, ashwagandha can be a little warming and Shatavari is cooling, so it helps balance out the energetics of it to make it more suited for everyone across the board. Um, this formula specifically is very grounding. So if your head is kind of out in the clouds, and maybe you have anxiety or even just stress, this will help bring you back down more so into your body to be more present. It's also nervine tropho-restorative, which means that it will help rebuild the nervous system. So that can actually be beneficial for all sorts of conditions, including multiple sclerosis, where your nervous system literally is basically just being destroyed with holes in it, or even Parkinson's and even things like Alzheimer's, because the brain is part of your nervous system. Uh, so all of that will be more easily healable with ashwagandha. In fact, it's been shown to do some pretty amazing things for that. I'll add more information below this video so you can read more details about this. And the Shatavari is especially cooling and moistening, and also has some of those exact same sorts of benefits for the mind. So it's also an adaptogenic combo where they both work on the hormones. So this is great for if you're any sort of hormonal issue like reproductive or just stress, too much cortisol, things like that. And so ashwagandha is specifically known because of its nervine effect, which I was mentioning earlier. It works on the nervous system, which helps you sleep better. And then it's also adaptogenic, which also controls the hormones. So if you have too much cortisol or whatever, which is considered the stress hormone, even though it's necessary for being awake, then it can help balance that out so you can go to sleep a lot better. So I showed it before, but this is what it looks like when it's done. It's pretty good. I consume it just about every single morning. It's tastes pretty good. The thing about herbs is sometimes they're not going to taste good to everyone. These taste pretty good to me. I have had batches of different herbs before that tasted different, so that is a factor too. Although every batch I've had of ashwagandha, I've always been able to put at least 1 or 2 tablespoons in a smoothie and have it turn out okay. The other thing is you probably want to start with like a tablespoon, a teaspoon, before you work your way up to a full tablespoon, just to be safe, because some people can actually feel nauseous or it just doesn't feel right in their stomach. In rare cases, people can throw up from too much of one herb. It just doesn't taste good, and then a combination of that, and their body's just not used to it. So it's always good to start with a teaspoon your first time, work your way up to maybe two teaspoons the next day or so, and maybe work up to a tablespoon. For severe cases of even anxiety where people can't go outside or people just have difficulty functioning in society, ashwagandha has been shown to be amazing for that. And so people like that may want to slowly, over time, over like a couple of weeks or so, work their dose all the way up to maybe even 3 or 4 tablespoons. That's about probably the highest I've ever heard anyone dosing it at, and that will show pretty amazing benefits for conditions like that. So I hope you can make a smoothie like this if you want to, and enjoy. Check out the information below this video. Go ahead and like this. Nobody ever really likes much of my videos, but if you want to, go ahead. That would be cool. Thanks for watching.